Hi, I'm Dr. Keith Johnson. Now, I know you think you've got problems, and you're right. You probably do have some kind of problems. But let me direct your attention. In the 5th chapter of Mark in the Bible, there's a story of a man who really had problems. Something wrong with his mind. He just couldn't think right. And he was upset. He had stressed himself out to such an extent that he didn't know where to turn or what to do. And this man was in such bad shape that he decided to leave civilization and every now and then to terrorize people that would walk by. Otherwise, he would stay in his own cave that he created by himself, and he would cut himself according to the Bible. He was filled with some kind of demon, some kind of hurt. He was so troubled in his mind that he was self-deprecating in all kinds of ways. Now, I know you turned on this video, you've got bills that have to be paid, you can't find enough money, you can't find enough help or people that care about your troubles, and you think that your troubles are the worst. I had a terrible motorcycle accident one day when I was on my way to teach an evening college class, and I had a tracheotomy. My body was broken. They had to weld my pelvis together. They tell me that for about 10 minutes I literally seemed to die on their table. I had troubles too. Here's my point. When I was in the hospital feeling sorry for myself, every single day I ran into somebody who was much worse off than I was. And it taught me to count my blessings. Even to this day, my body is still trying to heal. But by the same token, there were people that were far worse off than I was. In fact, there was a chaplain in the hospital that could not walk or get out of his chair, and he'd been there since he was a teenager. He had to eat through a straw. He could not get out of the chair. He lived his life in that chair. He couldn't move from the neck down, and yet I said to him, how did you stand it? How did you go through life able to overcome all that problem? And he said, I just counted my blessings, and I always met somebody who was worse than I was. I thought, worse than he was? How can you be worse? There are people that are facing the same problems you've got. And there are people that are stressed out of the same problems. In fact, it is stress that puts most of us in the hospital. Whether we realize it or not, we are better off in life. God has given us blessing. And so here you are thinking, well, I'm just not happy, things aren't going my way, I feel stressed. Well, I understand that. We all feel stressed, we all face troubles. But this man was locked himself in a cave. He was cutting himself, hurting himself, and all kinds of problems facing him. He was troubled in his mind. He didn't know what to do to straighten himself out. He was staying in the cave away from people, and when people came, he scared them to death. And he had people running and screaming every time he turned around. This man was very troubled. Now let me read to you from Mark, the 5th chapter, what happened. And always night and day he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones. But when he saw Jesus afar off, he ran and worshipped him. Story of a man who got tired of living in scary surroundings. In the tombs, came into the Savior for relief, suddenly saw Jesus, and suddenly his prayers were answered. His troubles were quenched. Jesus can heal your problems. If he can solve the problems of a man stuck in a cave, cutting himself and self-deprecating himself, and creating all kinds of fears and troubles with children, Jesus healed him. When that man saw Jesus, he felt peace. And that's not just true of him. It's true of me. When I experienced Christ, when I asked him into my life, when I decided to dedicate myself to his service, Suddenly I was at peace. And every day when I feel troubled, I turn to Jesus. And when Jesus appears in my heart, suddenly I'm at peace. And I want to recommend the same thing to you. I don't know what kind of troubles you've got. And I know your troubles are as bad as mine. I know that my troubles are as bad as the fellow that locked himself in the cave, but not near as bad as his causing all kinds of trouble. And yet when he saw Jesus, no matter what his trouble was, he found peace. That's what Jesus says. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Let Jesus take care of you. Let him come into your heart and fill you with the peace that Jesus has to offer you. Just like he calmed the storm for the disciples whose boat was about to tip in the water, he wants to bring that same peace to you and stop the storms of your life. To that man locked in the cave, causing all kinds of trouble and torment for himself, when he saw Jesus, he fell down and worshipped him, and that troubled man was at peace. Hopefully none of you are in that bad a shape where you're running into a cave and cutting yourself. But Jesus wants to give you the peace you're looking for. And hopefully my troubles are not as bad as that man in the cave. But when I came to Christ, when I asked Jesus for help, he gives it to me every day. I'm telling you, you can experience God's peace. All you have to do is say, Jesus, I want you in my heart. I want you to live in my life. I want you to give me the peace that passes all understanding. Jesus wants to do it. That's why he came, to give us peace, to experience his love, and to understand his forgiveness and grace, so that we could share it with the rest of the world. That poor man in the cave was very troubled. I've been very troubled. You're very troubled. We all have our problems, our individual problems that we face. But Jesus will give you, me, and that man in the cave peace that passes all understanding. Give him a chance to come into your heart. Jesus will not invade you. He will not force himself upon you. But he will come into your life if you invite him. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, Jesus said, and I will give you rest. That's what you need, is the rest of Jesus. You need the peace that he has to offer you. Don't cut yourself short. Realize that you are more valuable to God than the entire worth of the world. What shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world and suffer the loss of his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? The answer is nothing. Nothing is worth you. You're the only kind of person like yourself. You're one of a kind. And God has a special purpose in mind for you. He wants to put you to work. He wants to make you experience his power. He wants you to get out there and overcome your troubles and be courageous, be ready to face the power of the Lord and the proper understanding of what God has to offer you.